Welcome back to the 4A Baseball Podcast, ladies and gentlemen. Today we are in the slumps below of the AL mid, the mid of the mid, the bad. And we are with the Kansas City Royals and the Detroit Tigers. Two young teams, one kind of more promising that we didn't really expect to be a bit more promising after a couple offseason moves, and the Detroit Tigers. We're going to kick it off with the exciting, more young team. How are you guys doing today?
Oh, doing good. This is we got to talk about these teams. Are they rebuilding? I don't know. What is the direction, Stavs?
I mean, I don't know the direction. Hopefully upwards, right? But I mean, both these teams are fun to watch. Maybe not fun to watch, but both these teams are young and promising, and hopefully can achieve something. I'm excited to talk about both these teams. They both made a bunch of moves this offseason that hopefully bolsters their rosters in some shape or form. And they're not just sitting there and doing nothing. They're trying to compete, right? Which you could be a team with zero direction trying to compete, or you could be a team that's just not trying at all. And both these teams seem to have the right idea in their head. It's just a matter of having that come to fruition.
Agreed. And we're going to kick it off with the Royals, who last season and this season are, I think, night and day compared to one another, just in like the differences of the organization, which we'll talk about in a moment. They went 65 and 97 for worst in the AL mid, making them the AL bad. Bobby Witt Jr. had a 2030 rookie season, but outside of that, there wasn't really much to his game. His defense was really bad. And then Vinny Pasquantino, baby, the Pasquatch, top 10 in MLB and expected WOBA. Elite slugger, not a great defender. And I'd like to talk on one thing before Stavs goes through the rest of the offseason. Their longtime general manager, Dayton Moore, is gone. This is a guy who led them to a World Series, and he had really just become outdated. And the guy who took over GM was his right-hand man, and everyone's like, oh, isn't it just going to be more of the same? But it looks like they're genuinely taking step in at least in the right direction, right? They've gotten a new pitching coach who's adapted more analytics. They've got a completely new hitting staff throughout the minor leagues and major leagues. And it looks like this team they got a new manager, Matt Cutraro. Like, it looks like this team might be adjusting to the 21st century. And that's a good sign when you have some high level prospects. We'll call it that.
I mean, that's definitely a good sign, and it's a sign the Nationals should probably take to do something similar, but they're not going to. But let's talk about the rest of their moves that this GM did. Ryan O'Hearn, he heads out to Baltimore for cash. They trade Michael A. Taylor, Minnesota, for Evan Sisk and Steven Cruz. Trade Alberto Mondesi for Josh Taylor, and trade Anthony Misowicz to St. Louis for cash. I butchered that. I apologize. I'm trying to get better. But they do re-sign Zach Greinke. And then sign Ryan Yarbrough, Jordan Lyles. Again, I talked about how they got Evan Sisk, Steven Cruz, and Josh Taylor from their subsequent trades. And then they go out and sign a flame-throwing lefty by the name of Aroldis Chapman. They were the ones that bit and took the chance on Aroldis Chapman. Hopefully it'll come to some sort of value for them. But if it doesn't, it's 1 year, $3.75 million that they're losing out on.
I mean, it's a very low sum of money. It's a good risk, good reward. Obviously, if there's issues there, just send them out. Like, Aroldis Chapman, honestly, is a trade deadline piece for them, and it's perfectly fine to be that way. I think this team last year didn't have much of an identity. It seemed like they were trying to compete a little bit, and now they have their identity of this is a rebuild. This is a rebuild, and we're going to let our young guys play, and we're actually going to work towards something better. Maybe starting getting vaccinated so let their players play in Canada. I think actually maybe they repealed that. But I like the move of trading Taylor and Mondesi. I was a bit higher on their record before they made those moves because it was like, not as much of a rebuild, but just like scarcely trying to compete. But actually, this looks like they're rebuilding now, and I'm happy about that.
Yeah, I wouldn't have considered this team close to competing a couple years ago or even last season. And I'm kind of glad that they're kind of surrounding this core of good players with some talent. And I think that we're still a couple years out, but this is kind of a team that now has a future and kind of a timeline now. Got the young guys, you got Pascantino, you got Bobby Witt, you got Melendez. A lot of young talent on this team that probably will be the core of this rebuild. But I mean, it's not a bad offseason. You can't expect them to do a full sell, and you're not expecting them to go out and buy out like Carlos Correa. But this is, a good move, a good offseason for mid team.
I mean, they went out and made moves. Like I said, they're not staying stagnant and just kind of staying with their guys. They went out and they made moves, unlike the Colorado Rockies, right? That's really what matters, and it's showing the city of Kansas City that they are willing to go out and try and do things, and they're not just gonna sit and let it go.
Yeah, and
Um,
also, sorry, I just wanted to mention one thing
you
real
good?
quick. There's a plan for the Royals to build a new stadium, and it's not going to
No,
be 30 minutes away from the city. The goal of building a new stadium is to put it in the city, which will increase the revenue, which is huge
Yeah.
for developing a team.
yes, but Kaufman's iconic.
Yeah,
They
it's
they have to
beautiful.
they have to take some inspiration if they're going to move Kauffman Stadium.
I
Kauffman is a top 10 stadium in baseball.
didn't
Um,
they?
it is
Hold
it's
on.
it's a classic stadium, and you need to bring some aspects, especially the fountains in the outfield. It
I
is
agree.
very unfortunate that the idea of stadiums has been moving more towards outer city, parking lot city, like big parking lot surrounding this.
Yeah,
Inner city stadiums are great. In Baltimore, in Chicago, New York, those are great stadiums. Parking's probably more of a pain out there, but it brings more people in. So I think obviously yes, bringing it into Kansas City would be good, but getting rid of such a iconic stadium would kind of might hurt them actually.
That definitely is true. But did you see the look of this new stadium, Tom?
yeah.
Because
It's
I remember it vaguely. It is beautiful looking. Like the
I will take a
skyline
look.
looks pretty. There's a huge scoreboard out and left. Like this is a nice looking stadium if it can come to if it can come to look like this. And yeah, Kaufman's a big loss. It's a stadium I've always wanted to go out to. Hopefully, I get a chance before they tear it down. But this stadium is going to look good, and it's going to be very, very beneficial for the Kansas City Royals as an organization, top to bottom.
yeah,
Yeah,
I
I mean, I'm
agree.
looking at the picture right now. I see some fountains in the outfield. I'm sold. This is all I needed.
You just
There are
wanted the
some fountain
fountains.
there are some fountains in the outfield. I like Kaufman better, but I think inner city might be better for revenue.
Yeah, I
This
agree.
has nothing to do with the projections, but obviously this would bring in a lot more money and it would probably be better for the team. Um, that's exciting actually. I love baseball architecture. I don't know if you guys are nerds for that too, but no, no. Write that down. Write that down. I don't know if you guys are nerds for baseball architecture, but I just love baseball architecture. I don't know what it is about me, but Steph, what do you think about that?
I mean, it's fun. It's definitely fun to talk about. But you know what? Let's get back on track. Let's talk about the starting rotation. They got Zach Greinke, Jordan Lyles, Brady Singer, Ryan Yarborough, and Brad Keller.
This is a
Uh,
It's a,
bottom 10 rotation in
it's a
baseball.
rotation.
yeah. Right now, Jordan Lyles is paid to throw 180 innings to a 4.5 ERA, and that is
Yep.
okay. That is perfectly okay. Zach Greinke is an aging veteran who's just a gift to mankind. Um, he's a Hall of Famer. There's not much of an argument there anymore. The dude's a Hall of Famer. Brady Singer showed really good signs of life last year, and their pitching coach this offseason has been working on him with a cutter. That'd be a really good bridge pitch between his really effective slider and changeup with his good sinker. Ryan Yarbrough never really had the potential to be an actual starter in Tampa Bay, and I'd like to see him get worked on a little bit. He's very good at soft contact. Counted his like max effort pitches, all of that 88. I think that there is upside. I'm not calling it good. Don't take that out of proportion. I think that there is upside to this starting rotation and that they can be decent. And also Brad Keller's like dollar store Corbin Burns. I don't know if you guys like read into that, but basically his cutter is like very similar profile. It just needs to be adjusted on its tilt a little bit, and they can have a dollar store version of Corbin Burns.
I mean, I'm just looking at percentile stats. Um, it's pretty bad. I mean, it's probably bottom 5 on the surface right now. I think if you get a breakout from Brady Singer, you maybe have some potential, but I think we see what Ryan Yarbrough is going to be. I think it's going to be more of a soft contact guy. Might get, might give up a lot of hits, but he gets soft contact. That might start translating to effectiveness later on. But right now, I'm not sold, especially Jordan Lyles, Brad Keller, and Zach Greinke. You love Zach Greinke, but he's not very good. I don't know. I think this has to be one of the worst rotations in baseball. There's no guy that stands out to me right now.
Brady Singer stands out to me. I like
Yeah,
him.
Brady Singer, yeah.
Yeah, the
Um,
issue with him is he's just young. That's really it.
yeah, sorry. I'm trying to find the article that I read. It's basically comparing Brad Keller to become like he could be a Corbin Burns type pitcher, like the style. Not that he is any ounce of what Corbin Burns is, but you can build him up to be a lesser version of that.
Yeah.
Uh,
I don't know. I just I think this is definitely the weakest part of this lineup. But with that, let's get into their bullpen, where they got Scott Barlow, Dylan Coleman, Aroldis Chapman, Taylor Clark, Amir Garrett, Josh Stalmont, Josh Taylor, Carlos Hernandez. It's also a bullpen. They
It
have a
is.
rotation. They have a bullpen.
I think the thing is with this team is that there's a lot of potential. I'd really like to see this pitching coach just come in and overhaul everything. This new pitching coach, like introduce analytics, work on something with these guys. Because Scott Barlow's got really good potential. Dylan Coleman's got really good potential. The shape on his fastball is just piss poor. Same with Josh Stammen. Aroldis Chapman actually has a very good fastball, even if it's declining in velocity. Like it looks very good, numbers wise. I think this bullpen can be good. It just needs to be developed. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with this pitching staff and this bullpen being bad, but developing. That is what a rebuild is.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not necessarily like sold on anyone, but I mean, we've seen this a million times. Guys just come out of nowhere, appearing. There's a couple of guys that could, come onto the scene here, but most of them here, I mean, like you mentioned earlier, will probably be trade pieces if they break out because a lot of them are past their prime in this bullpen.
Yeah. Like Chapman, I think, is the prime example of that. Amir Garrett, maybe if he's doing well halfway through the season. It's never really clicked with him. It's just it's a rebuild. And this year I'm giving the Royals leeway because it is a new general manager. It is basically a completely differently run organization. If they're going to adapt analytics, I want to see there be tangible and visible improvements to their pitching.
Yeah, and I think that's definitely the big factor here. I mean, their lineup appears to be getting better every year, but their pitching has been consistently mediocre for about 10 years. I think it's been a very long time since you've seen dominant pitching in Kansas City.
Yeah.
Trying to think of the last. Who was the last one?
2016, 2017. Once that World Series
yeah.
team like fizzled out.
Yeah, like
Jordan
Wade
Ventura,
Davis.
Yeah.
Wade Davis,
Greg Holland, all that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely think for the most important part of this lineup is going to be their development. You need to see strides forward in any capacity, top to bottom throughout the entirety of the organization. But with that, let's head over to their actual lineup. So they got Bobby Witt Jr. at shortstop, MJ Melendez at the DH position, Salvador Perez behind the dish, Vinny Pasquantino at first, Hunter Dozier at third, Kyle Isbell in center field, Edward Olivares in left field, Michael Massey at second, and Nate Eaton.
He's at first base, or he's
at
in
first.
right field. Right field.
Yeah,
I
right field.
probably should have written that. That's not bad.
He did not. But off the bench, they got Freddie Fermin, Matt Duffy, Nicky Lopez, and Franmil Reyes.
So you see, that's some decent depth right there, with upside at least. We saw what Franmil Reyes can do. He hasn't been quite that in a little bit, but we've seen what he can do. He's not a guy that's like aging like the other guys. Like this is a guy that just kind of fell off a little bit. I think with some tweaking to his mechanics, he might be able to return to form. Matt Duffy was kind of a contact guy in Anaheim. He was a decent bat in the lineup, probably about league average. And then Nicky Lopez is still very young too. I think he's actually very young.
Very good glove too.
Yeah. So I mean, there's depth in this lineup, and I mean, we haven't even talked about the bats in this lineup. 1 through 4, they all have their own power threat. I think all 4 of those guys have the high power upside.
I agree. I really like Bobby Witt Jr. It's just this year, I think, is really the telltale sign of what he is. Is so long as there's not like injuries that kind of like interfere with his development as a player, I think this season is going to let us know more of what he is. More of if he's really just a home runs and steals type guy, or if there's more dimensions to his game. There's maybe some defense, or he can hit the ball to the gaps. You know, if he's a actual hitter, or if he's kind of just this exciting but lower value player.
Yeah, and the hype around this guy was crazy. I mean, I think he's one of the most hyped up prospects we've seen in our lifetime. So I mean, and it's only his first season in the pros. I think there's a lot to build on after one season. I think, like you mentioned, big telltale season. Um, I I predict there will be some contact improvement as well as some fielding improvement. I think the power and speed were already displayed last season.
Agree. I also sorry,
yeah.
Sos, you got it. No, no, go.
No, you're good. I was just gonna say I definitely agree. Bobby Witt Jr. I mean, he's a good player, and we need to. I want to see more from him, and I want to see him take that next step this upcoming season.
Again, I'm going to give them some leeway this year. I want to see them develop young talent, which means, though, I don't want to see crusty 30-year-old veterans that aren't going anywhere with their careers taking at bats from young kids. Like, if they have a young prospect that is ready to get some at bats on the major league level, do not block him with some Franmil Reyes. Unless Franmil Reyes is not traded at the deadline because he's not playing well or whatever, do not let some young kid get blocked by Franmil Reyes or
Yeah,
Matt Duffy. Let the kids play. Let them develop. Let them see major league pitching. Like MJ Melendez is in the 2-hole. He's going to see a lot of pitching this year. Vinny Pasquantino, 4 spot. Hunter Dozier is a guy that should not get in the way of any prospect getting playing time. And so long as the Kansas City Royals let their young guys get at bats, even if they're not even that successful, the young kids, this season will be a success for my eyes in the Kansas City Royals.
yeah. I mean, different teams have different goals, and I think the goal of this season should be, you know, development. And I don't think you can grade their season based on a record or like their run differential. I think you have to grade it on the individual success of these stars. I mean, when we do our grade reflections in what, like 9 months or something like a long time,
Yeah.
we have to, weigh in the factor of this isn't a season that they expected to win. This is a season they expected to develop players. And I think that they're definitely taking strides in the right direction for an organization that's lacked that for a couple seasons now.
I'm looking back to find what we graded their season last year. If you haven't followed us on social media yet, all social media links will be in the description below. You can find everything we've posted from last year, things we're going to be keeping up with this year. It's a good place to check out. Looking at their grades from last year, here we are. The Kansas City Royals, we all gave them C's and C minuses. And I think that was more of just because they didn't do anything last year. They weren't good, they weren't bad, but they weren't rebuilding last year. They didn't have a direction, and right now they have direction.
I was upset last season that after probably 3 consecutive seasons of Whit Merrifield playing at an elite second base level, they finally traded him when he wasn't playing as good. That was what I was disappointed about. You could have probably traded him in 2019, 2020, and 2021 and gotten so much more than what they got from him in 2022. And that was very disappointing for me. And that kind of fear to pull the trigger for them was the reason I gave them such a low grade. But now I feel like they're more willing to make moves for the future and not just now.
I'm gonna go on a low tier hot take right here.
Okay.
I would give their offseason an A minus.
I don't know. I mean, yeah, you got to get guys to eat innings. So the pickups of Greinke, Yarbrough, those guys are not expected to come in here and be all-stars. They're expected to eat innings. So what they're trying to do is not bad. And I think compared to other teams in this league, there's an actual like pretty solid plan going on here. I'm a little bit concerned about the lack of depth in their farm system now after all these guys graduated. We'll get to that in a minute, but I think the way they're going right now, it's probably good. And if there's some players that are performing, you can obviously flip them for pieces, and those pieces will eventually develop in their farm system. So this is kind of, I don't know. I wouldn't consider this the back half of their rebuild, but I would consider this mid rebuild probably.
Yeah,
Probably
because
beginning of the back half.
because the kids are up right now. Like they're just starting to play right now. Right now they're slotted to get the 5th pick in next year's draft. and I'm just trying to find Baseball America is not letting me do this. I'm just looking at a mock draft right now, and it has them taking Jacob Wilson from Grand Canyon, who's a shortstop, right? They don't need another shortstop, right? Like,
I
I don't
mean,
know.
so when it comes to drafts, you got to take the best player available usually
Yeah.
because you can, but that's how it works. But and there's a million other spots you can put him. I mean, second base position is pretty open on this team.
Mhm.
Stubbs, what do you guys say?
Yeah, but they do have, so they have Bobby Witt up currently. They also have Michael Garcia. He's their third ranked prospect. His ETA is supposed to be this year. Nick Lofton's a utility guy. Caden Wallace is a third base. Like that's just three of their top five prospects. You have a shortstop, utility, and a third baseman. So like it's kind of I don't know if shortstop's necessarily their most needed position. So I don't know. Well, yes, you should probably take best available. You also need to know what your needs are, right? If the best player available is a shortstop and you have Bobby Witt Jr. and Michael Garcia both at shortstop position already, you might it's not always about best players, about best fit too. Which is why like I'm trying to think of like a comparison. Like in the NBA, a couple seasons ago, the Warriors drafted James Wiseman because they needed a center. They didn't need another guard. They didn't need LaMelo Ball. They needed a center, and then they went with James Wiseman.
And that
So
didn't
it's not
work out
always
for him.
about. I mean, it didn't, but
That was a bad
that's
example.
because but it's not because that's why they went with him.
Yeah, yeah, but it didn't work out because now you
Or,
have
or how
the
about this?
best
How about this?
available. Okay,
The Suns went with DeAndre Ayton because he's a
okay,
center. They didn't
that's
go
fair.
after Trae Young or Luka Doncic, which would have been the better player. They went with best fit for their team.
Um, yeah, and also like we are talking about the young guys, right? They also graduated Nick Prado last year, who is a pretty decent prospect. And right now, I don't know why he's not projected on their roster. I was thinking about that. He's not injured, nothing wrong there. Put him in left field. Edward Olivares doesn't need the at bats that he does, or Nate Eaton. Um, they don't have any prospects in the top 100 for Fangraphs, which is 112 players. And Gavin Cross is their number 61 according to MLB Pipeline, but he's not expected until 2025. So right now, there's no support coming from the minor leagues.
Yeah, and that's a bit concerning, I would say. But I think you can definitely get a couple pieces this season, given that some players are having good seasons, and you got to bet that at least one of these guys is going to have a decent season, decent enough to get some pieces back. But the team you're building here, you need some more reinforcements. So eventually you're going to need a couple more pieces. And I don't know how they're going to go about that.
All right, you guys ready to hop on over to predictions?
Oh yeah.
Let's
Stavs, lead
do
us
it.
off, Stavs.
Okay, I'll lead you off. So I do have them being better than they were last year at 67 and 95. I'm excited to watch this team play. MVP I have is Bobby Witt Jr. I think he is going to take that next step forward. But with that being said, he is also their most important player because if he doesn't take that step forward and he's still just kind of the same player he was last year, that is not boding well for the Kansas City Royals. Cy Young, there's really not, I mean, a player that you can pick, and you're like confident in, but like Zach Greinke always feels like a safe bet. And breakout, I have Vinny Pasquantino, if we can even call this season a breakout, because he kind of broke out last season, but I think he'll continue success and play well.
Yeah, I mean, I got the record at 69-93, not that far off of you. I had their team MVP being Bobby Witt. I feel like that's a safer bet. Most important player, I really confused on this one. I mean, because in terms of importance, you could have someone that actually provides value to your team, or you could have someone that just balls out individually that could be traded. So for that reason, I think I'm going to say Chapman, Aroldis Chapman. I think if he has a good first half of the season, I see no reason why they don't trade him away and get someone really good. I mean, we saw it in 2016 when the Cubs went out and got Chapman, they got some pieces back. It's not going to be the same package, but if he's showing effectiveness, a flame-throwing left-hander in the bullpen is something that's very important for teams making a playoff push. So I think that I don't see why, if he's not playing well, they don't get a huge package back. Cy Young, I got Brady Singer. There's no one else in this rotation that I got winning the Cy Young. So I think Brady Singer is a pretty safe bet. Breakout, I got Vinny Pasquantino. You already know. Brad, it's all you. Where you at?
The MVP is the Pasquatch, Vinny Pasquantino, the best player in
Okay.
baseball. Like the
Yeah.
Italian nightmare, like national hero to Italy. Like the dude's a freak of nature. He is top 10 in expected WOBA last year. He's pretty good though. He's hit through all levels. For the record, I added Tom and Stev's records and I just divided it by 2, otherwise known as I'm in between them. I'm at 68 and 94. For their Cy Young and breakout, I put Brady Singer because I see him taking a step in the right direction. There was one start last year that really stands out to me is when he faced the Yankees. He went 7 innings, struck out 10, and only allowed 1 hit. That looked like dominance to me. And sometimes when you see breakouts of guys or like a very good performance, it's like, you know what, he pitched pretty well today, but it didn't seem dominant. Hunter Green, when he takes over a game, seems dominant. That start felt dominant. That felt like Logan Webb in the playoffs dominant. Like very similar profile of pitch type.
Shout out
If-
Logan Webb.
It felt dominant. And for the most important, I did put Bobby Witt Jr. I do believe that he must develop for the future of this organization.
That's fair. I mean, I think all of us make a good point, but for their volatility, are they a volatile team or no?
No, they're gonna be
that's what I'm
bad. They're a bad
I mean,
team.
What's their ceiling though? Like just like 70 wins?
70.
73, 70. I could see the thing is I could see them being annoying in a series.
Yeah, but the thing is, there's no way they don't sell at the deadline. Because if say they have a good first half of the season, that probably means that you're getting production from some of the guys that will be traded. So when they get traded, obviously you're going to have some sort of fall off. Not a crazy fall off, but you're going to see some sort of fall off. So the better they're doing in the first half, the worse they're going to do in the second half. I feel.
The Orioles were doing great in the first half last year, sold at the deadline and got even better.
That was weird. That was weird. That was because they called up friggin' Adley. Yeah, that's
He came
definitely
up before the deadline.
a little bit before the deadline.
2 months.
No,
Yeah.
Yes.
I refuse.
Anyways, I'll compromise at 72 and 90.
Okay,
Sounds good.
And then for
And
their
their
floor,
floor.
like 60
they can be
wins.
really bad. Yeah.
Like 60 and
Yeah,
102,
60
something
seems,
like that.
60 seems right.
Like they're not going to be like Nationals, Reds, Athletics level of bad, but they're not good either.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So that'll do it for the Kansas City Royals. And we're going to hop over